direction. We now move into a conversation titled DPI and Climate Change. It's my honor to welcome to the stage Guilherme Alberto Almeida de Almeida, Program Director, Ministry of Management and Innovation in Public Services, Brazil, Sujit Nair, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder, Foundation for Interoperability in Digital Economy. The conversation will be moderated by Rahul Mathan, partner, Trilegal. Please come to the stage. May I have the video, please? Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be back at GTS, and we're going to do a slightly different kind of a panel. The context of this panel was sort of set by Nandan in his remarks in passing when we opened GTS. He spoke briefly about, in his conversation with Yanka, about the idea of a DPI for climate. And I want to take a moment to put this in context. We have a very significant year in climate this year. It is the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. It is the time when countries of the world have to reaffirm their commitments, as it were, to climate. The way in which the Paris Agreement is designed to work is that countries have to ratchet up the seriousness and significance of their commitments to bringing down the temperature to within 1.5 degrees centigrade of pre-industrial levels. And this is the time when they have to reaffirm those commitments. Now, as it happens, it is also, as we've heard from the beginning of the day, I was just telling Rudy, this is a terribly depressing way to start the second day of GTS. But it is a fairly depressing time, and perhaps some of that rolls into climate as well. One of the requirements of climate is climate finance. And we know that one of the biggest contributors to that is walking out of the Paris Agreement. And so at this particular time, we have to seriously reimagine the way in which climate is done. Because the fact that temperatures are rising is absolutely obvious and evident. The fact that yesterday we had to shut down the party on the terrace because there was a dust storm that actually killed someone has to have some explanation. And we have to do something about it. And as we said in the early panel, when you're given lemons, you make lemonade. Once the egg is broken, you make an omelette. And we have to find a way to do that. And Brazil has the unenviable task of leading the world in that. And what's really remarkable about Brazil is that Brazil has chosen the opportunity to pivot. And I'm just going to read very briefly a submission that Brazil made in relation to mitigation. I'm just reading from there. They're saying, digital platforms can be used to promote sustainable practices, to facilitate the adoption of decentralized renewable energy systems, to share evidence-based information about climate change. Brazil has successful experiences and creative solutions involving DPI for forest protection and restoration. Brazil is convinced that including the topic of DPI in the discussion on forest protection and restoration presents an opportunity to reflect on the barriers that developing economies face in deploying, leveraging, and maintaining such solutions. This is live on the climate website, which means that a DPI for climate that Nandan briefly mentioned is actually already a reality in the conversation. We have a very short amount of time to cover this, and I've got two people who have rich experience in two ends of the spectrum. And I'm going to first turn to Guy, who is in the department that is responsible for the DPI for climate that was mentioned in what I just read out, and that is CAR, which is the Rural Agricultural Registry. So, Guy, I want you to just put it in context just remember that in this audience, I don't think very many people have a have seen what a rainforest is, certainly not a rainforest as large as the one that you have. I understand that your rainforest is so big that it can fit India in it. And if that is the size of the climate contribution, what exactly is the problem that CAR has set out to solve?
Well, thank you, Raul, and thanks Carnegie and Ministry of External Affairs for inviting us here. I guess what we are tackling in Brazil regularly, and particularly on the path to COP30, is how to implement preservation policies which are effective. And when you have such huge environmental assets such as the Amazon forest, and I just calculated, I think it's 1 India and a half within the Brazilian portion of the Amazon rainforest. So you need to establish monitoring and protection institutions which encompass not only policies but also digital systems. Particularly in Brazil, and I think this is somehow different around the world, you have strong preservation policies. So every single landholder is supposed to preserve areas within their properties, namely riverbanks, top of hills, and so on, but also a mandatory percentage of their land should be either preserved, or if it's not, it should be restored, right, it's recovered. So in order to monitor those commitments, we implemented more than 10 years ago the Rural Environmental Registry. So every single landowner is required to, in a geo-referenced manner, to disclose not only which are the boundaries for his, her, or their property, but also where are the preserved areas, which areas are used for mandatory preservation within their properties. So far, that leads up to 7.5 million more than 7.5 million registries so far, which cover nearly 80% of the Brazilian territory, which is probably the largest database on privately owned forests in the world. So it's a treasure trove of information for climate purposes, but only mentioning where forests are is not enough. Right? You just mentioned that finance is crucial whenever we are leveraging incentives for preservation. So we are working and have been establishing several incentive mechanisms to make that preservation to happen. For instance, if you are applying for rural loan, if you want to finance your crops, you need to have such registry. And we've been working together with COS here to expedite that process by providing verifiable credentials in that context so that we can expeditely make this rural loans process even more important and expedite. Also, you need to have validated information on the territory. So, and we've been working together as well with NORAD on that to make sure that we have not only accurate information, but we can use DPIs for georeferencing systems so that could be used abroad. And finally, if you manage to have preserved land, people who have surpluses, they can trade those surpluses. Or if you have preserved areas through time, you're either entitled to payment for environmental services, and we've been working with UNDP for that, or it could even become a ledger for carbon markets. So you mentioned at the beginning that there might be a DPI for climate. I would say, I amend that by saying that there are DPIs for climate. So the idea of bundling together several DPI-powered approaches to that can help us to enforce that basic commitment which Brazil has and that might become global, like private property should also have environmental commitments on mitigation and preservation, and then support financial mechanisms to make that to come true. I think this is a initial vision for reference.
It's amazing. We started talking about DPI, but really, the more we dig, we find many countries have adopted this particular approach to a lot of problems. And I think this is one of the biggest problems. I think the beautiful thing about what you're doing and continuing to do, particularly with verifiable credentials, is that this is likely to feed into, now the European Union has a requirement that exported crops must be deforestation free. And a verifiable credential could really work to certify that.
That's the elegance of a DPI approach, right? Whenever the system is in place, it can serve multiple purposes. It can serve traceability, it can serve carbon markets, financing, protecting the forest, monitoring, AI powering reflections on climate. We were discussing Open AgriNet earlier on, and it totally connects with the information which might be there. So when we realize that connecting the dots is the way forward, we are on our way to COP30.
And look, if we're saying it's going to cost 5 trillion to cure the economy, we really don't have 5 trillion. But with this, we could perhaps cure it for much, much less. And really, that's the idea of what DPI does. It unlocks the abundance that is already there within society.
And more than that, I think collaboration is crucial to that. I just mentioned a few partners around here, and there are more and more, much more people have been discussing the role and importance of DPI for climate. And working together towards a common goal is part of the equation, because as I heard, we need exponential solutions for exponential problems, right?
We need exponential solutions. So if we need exponential solutions, just one solution is not good enough. I'm going to turn to Sujit, because we also have another really complicated problem, and that is the fact that our energy system was fixed, as Nandan said, a century and something ago, and it hasn't changed since then. But right now, we're in a very different world where there is renewable solutions that we require, and we need to find a way to fit that in. Once again, we need to do that really efficiently, because cost, once again, needs to be in mind. So Sujit, you have worked on such a solution. Can you do a DG for dummies? Because just assume we're all dummies, and we've got to just understand it from basic principles up.
Sure. No, thanks, Rahul. In the interest of time, I'll save the thank yous for later. But I'm a generalist, so I'm also learning on energy, because this is an idea that came to us from the larger community around the work we do, talking about why aren't you doing anything in energy? And that's when I realized, to your point, we are perhaps in the most unprecedented time when it comes to electricity. People are calling it the new age of electricity. Fixing the grid, decarbonizing the grid, one of the most complex machines built on the planet, especially when you have three important trends shaping the future of the grid. One is rapid decarbonization of the industries, and the concrete pathway of decarbonization of industry has been electrification. Electrification of transportation, refrigeration of industry buildings and plants and all of that. So one is this very clearly a demand surge that is hitting the grid because of the electrification that's happening. Second is this whole idea of everybody can be an energy producer today, because the cost of solar and the cost of batteries, the cost curve declines that we have seen is so unprecedented that it's well within reach to have at a population scale deployment of behind the meter, rooftop solar and batteries. And that's happening at such an unprecedented space, so that you're creating a whole lot of a decentralized energy resources. Conventionally the utility grid has been unidirectional, where you have one big generation plant, and then there's a transmission corridor, and then you have the distribution, and then most of us were like passive customers behind the meter paying the bills. That's the only time the utilities recognize that we exist, to actually we being active consumers and prosumers. So this whole decentralization that's happening. So these three big trends, electrification, decentralization, and the third part, which is the natural digitizations that are happening. And every electric EV car is also a software-driven vehicle. Your thermostats are becoming software controlled. All your systems that take care of your ACs and others are getting software controlled. So there's a natural digitization that's happening. Because of this, we are in a situation where there is a very, very clear case for why the only way to do this at a sustainable scale, at a population scale, and make this this acceleration faster, is to unify these diverse discrete efforts. So what we are seeing is, of course, there are these big grid companies, utilities, and all trying to decarbonize and infuse more renewables into the grid. But parallelly, there is this whole edge grid that's happening behind the meter with all these distributed resources like the batteries and solars and electric cars and everything. They seem to be literally two separate ecosystems not talking to each other. the grid has no visibility behind the meter. Today, when we are talking about solarization of homes and Prime Minister announced 10 million rooftop solars, the grid guys are getting worried saying that I don't know when is this solar energy generation is being pushed back into the grid if I have excess energy, to which feeder is it connected to? There's absolutely no observability. And the whole of grid in the last 100 odd years have been working on this very tight supply-demand balance. And everything is based on a scheduled generation and management. And we have lost that control, we have lost that observability to manage the supply-demand balance when so many millions of micro energy resources are plugging into the grid, either supplying energy or drawing energy or pushing back energy from a battery. So it creates a situation where you have an edge grid actually making the big grid stumble and fall under its own weight. So to unify all of this, the DPI thinking is essential to this idea of how do we unify this discrete diverse energy resources in the edge grid and the big grid come together. And one of the things we have noticed when we are looking at the digitization efforts is literally we are building solutions in silos. Of course, there's an effort on virtual power plants and battery systems connected to the clouds. Everything, all the digitization is happening in silos. It was quite literally like as if you're building a road for every car. And this is the DPI thinking of saying, if we have one general purpose digital energy grid as an infrastructure that takes care of all of this come together on a unified energy rail and make them all come together, I think it'll create a whole new opportunity for not just grid governance and grid management in wake of these new stress that is coming to the grid, but also create a whole new innovation opportunities both in the private sector and public sector. I'll just give you a couple of examples and I'll hand it back to Rahul. One, today we are having conversations about how a floor mill operator in a village who's probably have a rooftop solar and battery to sort of have its own energy security when the grid is unstable can actually rent out virtually the battery for somebody else to use it to store and retrieve energy. So we are creating what is called as a decentralized battery energy storage systems where even a floor mill operator can participate in a formal energy economy that is taking shape. Similarly, a EV charging operator, a charging point operator, if he's connecting to the grid, is probably getting a brown or a black grid because the grid is not green yet. But specifically for that charging session, he can source energy through this digital energy grid infrastructure to buy it from a remote battery operator and have an electronic transaction to sort of prove that his socket can get green energy because it's actually having an electronic transaction on the protocol that is kind of enabling digital grid to make that happen. So these new ways of imagining possibilities is something unprecedented. So things like peer-to-peer energy, some of the states in India are looking at enabling consumers to trade energy between themselves at a sub-kilowatt level, a sub-megawatt level. And those are some things that can happen if you have common rails. So how do you bring all of them together and accelerate this whole decarbonization effort where you have the businesses, the utilities, governments and regulators all coming together, and all that required one unified digital infrastructure. And that's essentially the idea of digital energy grid. It's again a collection of various set of standards and protocols making this happen. And we already have some live implementations going. We do about 65 megawatt hours of transactions every day. On a live implementation of that grid in India, we have 50 companies forming an alliance to make that happen. And we have these transactions happening, and digital energy grid is actually live and happening. And now there's a conversation we are taking globally and inviting conversations from multiple countries, and of course, a conversation with Brazil and the COP30 team as well. But that's essentially what DEG is.
Sujit, I just want to double down on how you're doing it, just to make it a little more relatable. Sure. You are using the Beacon protocol behind some of this. I think we are all familiar with the Beacon protocol from the ONDC perspective.
Yeah.
But can you very simply, because we don't have time,
yes,
just simply explain how the protocol is helping unify all of these things?
Yeah. So essentially, if you look at similar to what we're seeing in ONDC and with energy, you would have an energy producer at one place. It could be a big energy generation company or a local prosumer who has some excess energy on the rooftop. And there's an energy consumer. And if you have millions of them, if they want to have a direct conversation with them, instead of waiting for one big platform to bring everybody together at a population scale, which may not happen, if you want to create a natural conversation between them, Beacon protocol comes in the way of making this consumer-provider interaction on any economic resource happen. In case of digital energy grid, you're talking about energy as a resource. You're also talking about energy related assets like battery renting, EV charging infrastructure, all of them being accessible. So Beacon protocol as a general purpose transaction value exchange protocol is kind of the spine on which the digital energy grid infrastructure is being envisioned, because Beacon protocol, little did we realize that we'll use it for energy, because it's built as a general purpose consumer provider value exchange protocol as a bunch of specifications, which is what is firing your ONDC and now some of those implementations on DEG.
So this has been a really short teaser, as it were, of how DPI thinking can be applied to just two areas of the climate conversation, both successfully and actually being implemented. We have a long way to go, but a very short time in which to do it. And we're hoping that this has been sort of a teaser for all of you to start thinking about this and seeing how we can apply this sort of thinking to various other areas. I mean, immediately we know loss and damage is a huge issue. When there's a climate disaster, how do we get money to people who really need it? And there's a DPI for that already. It's the G2P payments infrastructure. And so there are many different ways in which we can apply this, and we're hoping that by changing the conversation from what it has been for the last decade to this new way of unlocking abundance, we can actually show how DPI thinking can change the way in which we're having climate conversations. That's all we have to say. We hope by next year we'll have a lot more to say. I would like you all to join me in thanking both Guy and Sujit for doing all of this in such a short time.
Thank you for a timely conversation on DPI and climate change. Up next, we have a short talk titled DPI in Action. It's my privilege to welcome to the stage Mr. Nuruddin Boutayeb, President, Moroccan Foundation for the Promotion of Preschool Education. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want first to thank Carnegie India for inviting me to GTS 2025. And I'm honored to deliver this keynote speech in this session, DPI in Action. It will be around Morocco and its approach to digital public infrastructure. Morocco has positioned itself as an African pioneer in the development of digital public infrastructure, adopting an approach inspired by the Indian model while adapting it to national specificities. This collaboration with India, initiated nearly 8 years ago, has enabled the implementation of two structuring projects and that are gradually transforming Moroccan's digital landscape. First, the Digital Identification System, RNP RSU. As early as 2013, Morocco began reflecting on the modernization of its social aid system, which was until then characterized by a universal approach, as with cooking gas, or targeted but often imperfect methods. The objective was to adopt a more precise targeting system, minimizing human bias, and enable robust identification and authentication of beneficiaries. In November 2017, a Moroccan mission traveled to India to study the Aadhaar system successfully deployed nationwide. During a meeting with Mr. Nandan Nikani, the godfather of the Aadhaar system, a proposal for collaboration emerged to develop a modern identification core in the form of a digital public good. This collaboration led to the signing of an MOU between Morocco and India in 2018, with making the Kingdom of Morocco the first country to integrate its identification system, RMP, around MOSIP. This pioneering initiative has since been adopted over 20 countries, more than 20 countries. The RMP was successfully tested in 2 pilot regions at the end of 2021, being deployed nationwide the following year. Today, this system has enabled the enrollment of 20 million, more than 20 million people, 22 million people, the integration of 4.3 million households into the unified social register, the allocation of free medical coverage to over than 11 million beneficiaries. New targeted and aid programs are currently under study and can be deployed thanks to the RNP RSU infrastructure, thereby strengthening the Moroccan social protection system. The second project is the FMTPS LTMS Maharat platform to transform education through digital technology. During a visit to Bangalore in May 2024, the considerable progress made by India in the field of DPI since 2017 was noted. The DPI approach, which succeeded the India Stack concept, was particularly impressive for its results in the education sector with the Diksha platform. As president of the Moroccan Foundation of Preschool Education, FMPS, decision was made to develop an LTMS, a learning teaching an LTMS system. This platform aims to develop the skills of the Foundation's 24,000 educators, serve as a large-scale proof of concept for the Department of Education and Vocational Training, and offer a potentially replicable model in other West African countries. An MOU was signed between FMPS and Triple IT Bangalore COS, and an MVP is in the last stage of development with the support of COS, Google Cloud, Protean Tech, Deloitte, and the financial contribution of Co-Develop. This MVP will advantageously replace the e-learning solution previously used in SaaS mode, which was considered expensive and insufficiently adapted to specific needs. The future LTMS Maharat means skills in Arabic and sounds a little bit Hindi. Will offer a structured training path allowing each educator to take an initial placement test, follow a path marked by skills and sub-skills, progress gradually from the grade of junior educator to expert educator. Designed to evolve constantly thanks to the richness of the Sunbird Ed building blocks, this platform can be adapted to other professions by defining skills frameworks and developing specific modules. What next? Despite a relatively short preparation time, a conference was organized last January in Rabat in partnership with Google Cloud, the Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, and COS. This event brought together around 100 decision makers and IT managers from administration and private company. The conference offered an introduction to DPI approach, largely unknown in Morocco, especially recorded address by Mr. Nandan Likani, presentation of the Indian DPI journey by Mr. Ramesh, CEO of COS, a presentation on Diksha by Mr. Shankar Marwada, a presentation of DPI in a box by Google Cloud, and was followed by a lengthy question and answer session demonstrating the interest generated. In parallel with the conference, meeting was organized with three ministers, Agriculture, Commerce, and Employment, to present the DPI approach and especially the open network approach developed in India through ONDC, Honest, and Open Agri Network. Google Cloud has committed to conducting POC, proof of concept, in these three sectors, with the precise modality yet to be defined. Another action was the Sunbird Ed environment used for the Maharat platform was also presented during two workshops to 4 universities, and the objective is to launch a Sunbird Academy project to develop Moroccan expertise in this technology, thereby broadening the approach of the open source and DPG approach. UM6P, the university, has also expressed strong interest in developing a center of excellence in DPI after the center of excellence in Mozip that is already already developed, and meetings are scheduled to move forward with this project. Perspective and next steps: we have to strengthen foundational DPI to make citizen interaction increasingly presenceless, cashless, and paperless. We have already the ID layer, but we have to work on to accelerate the digital payment adoption in Morocco, and we can be inspired by Indian and also Brazilian experience. Establishment of secure data exchange via QR codes and DigiLocker. We have to develop sectorial DPI beyond fundamental infrastructure. Deep sectorial DPI could be developed in areas such as education and health, and the open network approach is particularly promising for including people excluded from the formal system, facilitating the transition from informal to formal economy, and reducing costs associated with multiple intermediaries. And finally, we intend to create an institutional vehicle to maintain momentum and ensure strong political support by the creation of a dedicated NGO, DPI for Africa, which is currently under discussion. The objective is to establish the structure before the end of this year with the support of Moroccan company and I hope Indian partners. As a conclusion, the DPG for DPI approach represents a particularly advantageous solution for digital transformation. More economical, elimination of license fees and reuse of proven solution. Faster, accelerated deployment thanks to the pre-built and interoperable components. More efficient, guaranteed scalability, interoperability, inclusivity, and digital sovereignty. This initiative aligns perfectly with Morocco's digital strategy for 2030, which aims to make the country the leading digital economy in Africa and to be among the top 50 in the United Nations E-Government Development Index. The large-scale development of DPI project will also foster public-private partnership and stimulate innovation. By adopting the DPG for DPI approach, Morocco is affirming its position as a leader in digital transformation in Africa while developing inclusive solutions tailored to its specific need. But in my opinion, the important thing is to remember that technical and funding matter aren't the problem. It is rather to find enough champions, risk-takers, and strong expertise in change management to conduct DPI project to success. I hope that after giving you an idea of what we did, what we are doing now, and what we'll do next, I will have the opportunity to talk about the how aspects that are more important. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir, for that stage-setting talk. I would request you to please take a seat on the stage, as this is a good segue to the next panel, DPI in action. It's my privilege to welcome to the stage Anish Kumar, Advisor, DPI 3, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Isaac Vasquez Montilla, Director of Public Innovation, Ministry of Public Administration, Dominican Republic, Gertrude Kadumbo, Chief Executive Officer and Board Secretary, National Switch Limited, Malawi, Rosemary Kisembo, Chief Executive Officer, National Identification and Registration Authority, Uganda, Farooq Yusuf Yabo, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Nigeria, Noureddin Butayeb, sir, you're already here. Moderating the session is Shankar Maruwada, CEO and co-founder Ekstep. Can we have the video, please?
Thank you, Mr. Bitayeb. That was a very inspiring talk. Welcome, distinguished panelists and audience, to this crucial conversation on DPI in action. I have witnessed firsthand the transformative impact of DPI at the scale of India, especially when it's designed with inclusion at its core, both from my experience at Aadhaar and also as CEO of Ekstep Foundation that works at the intersection of technology and transformation. That is why I'm excited today to have these distinguished panelists, each representing a diverse DPI journey. They'll be sharing their journeys, their lessons, and their way forward as they are all undergoing a DPI-enabled transformation. DPI represents shared digital systems that are secure, interoperable, and support inclusive delivery of public and private services across society. India's journey demonstrates that DPI can compress generational change into years, achieving in 9 years in financial inclusion what would otherwise have taken close to 50 years. The G20 consensus on DPI under India's presidency established that DPIs are essential for equitable development, particularly in the global south. We are also witnessing a historic shift where the global south is pioneering innovative digital transformation, often leapfrogging traditional systems. The creation of a global DPI repository now showcases 54 DPIs from 16 countries, providing a knowledge base for nations embarking on their digital journeys. DPI as a service, or DaaS, which was announced in the last Carnegie GTS, is enabling countries like Brazil, Malawi, Trinidad and Tobago to rapidly deploy solutions without sacrificing quality, security, or sovereignty. Despite impressive gains, there are persistent challenges in DPI adoption that need to be addressed. What concrete lessons can we extract from successful DPI implementations around the world? How can these experiences inform digital transformation efforts worldwide? What practical frameworks and policy frameworks can help nations with limited resources or technical capacity to implement DPI effectively? These are some of the questions we will be discussing. I look forward to our panelists sharing insights from their experiences as we explore how DPI can become a tool for inclusive development across the globe. Rosemary, if I may start with you, could you please elaborate on Uganda's DPI journey with digital identity? It contributed to governance efficiency and financial inclusion while addressing challenges like low birth and death registration rates. What's been your experience?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carnegie India, for inviting me. I'm always excited to be here. I cannot talk about our journey without talking about Triple ITB Bangalore. I want to thank Professor Rajagopalan and the team, Krish and everybody for giving us the experience that we have had. Our journey with DPI began with a need. What was our need? We are a brownfield, meaning that we had an identity solution, but we had a challenge in 3 key areas. 1, interoperability. 2, scalability. 3, flexibility, or the ability to change at the rate at which our legal system was changing. And 4, expanse. I'll discuss each briefly. So, our vendor product was very good. It worked very well. It was secure. But every time we needed another desktop or another tool to add to our list of tools, would need a new license. Now, furthermore, it had been made 10 years ago, and each time we needed to change something, we'd have to call a team, and they would have to guide us through this. And in essence, we were really locked in. For change, we needed somebody. For every aspect of expansion or improvement or continuous, additions, we needed to have a vendor on board. It was not sustainable. It was not a sustainable model. So enter MOSIP. Our journey with MOSIP began really 2 years ago. And we only signed a contract 1 year ago. 2 years ago, we began the discussion. 1 year ago, we signed a contract with what they call an integrator. And our journey has been exciting. We started out with a small team, and it was an experiment I took, of 12 people who had very little understanding of technology. We interested them in the platform, said get onto the platform, download it, it's free, you can access it, and begin the customization journey to the Registration of Persons Act of Uganda. It was a slow journey of 4 months, but by 5 months, people had gotten a grip of what they needed to do, and the customization journey began. So by the time we had an integrator on board, we were giving the integrator code to work with. From the DPG we had downloaded, we'd improved it to align with our law, and now we were giving them, please start from here. So for me, that's the first key success, I would say, in our journey. The other issue, what would I improve? Documentation of that DPG. Now, the other thing I would like to highlight, the standardization and information security and inclusion aspects of the DPG that we worked with. Consent became a matter of discussion. It's implemented almost in every aspect of the MOSIP platform that we work with. So in essence, the importance of privacy and protection of personal data became a topic that we were all aware of. It was in our previous product, I must say, but now it came into everybody's space. We had to learn with it and grow with it. What are the other things that I'm curious and glad to know that this DAS has taken off, DPI as a service. Our issue with that has been jurisdictional data jurisdiction across or out of our country. I'm sure there's a solution for it, but our journey has been exciting because of the interoperability, the scalability, the flexibility, and the standardization and information security that the product, the DPG that we were presented with has helped us. It is also going to, we are at piloting stage, but we can already see people plugging into the DPI to expand and strengthen fintechs. So even with the existing fintechs in the economy, the information security and the standard at which the DPG came at is driving, is driving technology up. Now, you don't just program; you have to program at a certain standard. So there is a chance for Africa. We have the smallest T, 10%. So in essence, you can, a partnership in this area will really strengthen not just us, but everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Mr. Farouk, Nigeria has gone beyond identity into payment systems, and you've been leveraging DPI to transform civil services into efficient, citizen-centric institutions. Can you also tell us about your plans for data exchanges on your journey forward?
Okay, thank you very much, Shankar. And please allow me to first start by thanking the Indian government and indeed their partners for inviting me to this very important and auspicious event. There's been a lot of learning in the last 2-3 days. Now, that said, I would like to put this in context. Nigeria happens to be the most populous country on the African continent, with about 250 million people, out of which 70% is under the age of 35, meaning that the median age is about 19. And so we're in that space where we have a lot of useful population that needs to be engaged. Secondly, it's also important to point to the fact that our economy has been the biggest economy on the continent, and so our GDP requires that we have very robust solutions. And so the government of Nigeria has taken a deliberate position in terms of how do we move forward. And the way has been done is to go by diversification of our economy across all sectors, to create new job opportunities, to be economically empowering the vast majority of the people that are coming. And one convenient way to do that is through technology. Now, our journey to DPI, I would say, has been a long one. Probably have started before we know anything about DPI. I think back 10, 15 years back, many Nigerian ministries, departments, and agencies, and even private sector have already deployed different kind of digital solutions. But this digital solution has always been in silos, isolated, lacking any very clear standards. Now, with the coming of the idea of DPI, which simply we see as capability to be able to use digital tools to create new economic opportunities in a very inclusive and far-reaching way across time and space. Now, with all of this, the question for us is, where do we stand when it comes to what has already been done in terms of our legacy assets and what we will be achieving if we adopt the concept of DPI as a model? And so it took the government leadership, especially within the digital economy sector, which I am working, almost the whole of 2023 and some part of 2024 to go around the world to engage from India itself to Europe, to China, to the US. And what we found was that the concept of DPI has two extremes. The first extreme being adopted by smaller countries in terms of numbers, where you have almost what you can call a straitjacket approach to integration and deployment of digital systems. On the other extreme is siloed systems, like you will find in Nigeria and in many other countries, including big countries. And in between are countries that have been able to synchronize and define rails like ID systems, like payment systems, and data exchanges to be able to pull in the other strings and have a wider integrated system. And so what we have done lately is to try and place ourselves. And incidentally, we happen to fall at the last extreme, where you have all kind of digital solutions, but that are siloed. And so the question is, if we are going to go into the DPI space or DPI race, where do we start? And so a starting point for us in recent times has been to develop a strategic framework which we see as a long-term visionary and strategic decision that is going to help us to create a digital capability that will be able to provide solutions across economic, social, political, and even environmental problems. And in order to do this, we need to have a well-crafted long-term strategy. And that was what we did. Early in 2014, we launched the Nigeria's digital strategy, which has 5 pillars. The first pillar is knowledge, where we are currently running the biggest capacity building program in the world. That is the 3MTT program, where we intend to train 3 million young Nigerians in all aspects of technology. And this has been on in the last year. We've so far trained over 200,000 young people. The next item is for us defining the policy framework, and that is how the DPI concept came about. As a policy, as a strategy, the government decides that we will build a digital infrastructure leveraging on already existing assets and expanding from that. And of course, we also quickly recognize that for you to do this, you need infrastructure. The foundational infrastructure hasn't been there. As we speak now, we are running a project that is going to install 90,000 kilometers of fiber across all nook and crannies of the country, expanding our broadband connectivity to 95% by the year 2030. This project is already on, leveraging on the already 40,000 kilometers of fiber optics that are in place. And of course, we are looking at innovation, entrepreneurship, and capital as the fourth pillar, with trade being the last one. And so, as we speak, we have narrowed the DPI vision as a people-oriented vision, relying solely on live events. So the current framework that we have come up with, arising from the strategy, is what you call DPI framework for live event support. So we recognize that the whole concept is to make people happy. And how do you do that? We define from the beginning of the journey, which is a birth, from our birth to our death, there are a number of issues that we deal with regularly. And these are the areas where we want DPI to help liberate and ensure that we are moving forward. So in essence, as we speak, Nigeria already has a digital ID system with over 100 million people already fully identified through the NIM system. We have also, over the years, as part of the Silo program, had the interbank exchange system, which is an instantaneous payment system that is already connecting both fintechs and all other sectors. So in essence, we already have the foundational building blocks for DPI, and as we speak, we are working to develop the data exchange, which is going to provide the integration across all the various legacy assets that are there. And this is going to place Nigeria within the next couple of months in a place where we had already leapfrogged in terms of our economic resilience, inclusivity, and sovereignty. And so we see DPI not as a product to import, but rather as a solution to be built, managed, and cascade into problem-solving, happiness creation tools for our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Gertrude, in Malawi, you have been experimenting with DPI as a service. You have evaluated it and you've decided to go ahead with it. Can you please share your experiences on that and inform the audience how such models can be scaled to other developing countries? Why is it relevant to other developing countries with limited resources?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Carnegie as well as the Ministry of External Affairs in India for the opportunity to come here, participate as well as head the AML as well as CFT policy. And this put pressure on the financial sector when it came to compliance. The reason being that Malawi had